And welcome to another episode of The Focal Thought. My guest today is Emmanuel Buabeng. How are you, Emmanuel?
Thank you. And thank you for having me, Croydon.
It's my pleasure. And you're coming to us all the way from Ghana today, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm based in Ghana.
That's good. That's good. Thank you again for being on this episode. And in this episode, we're going to discuss public speaking, which is something you're very good at. And I think, public speaking is something that's important. If you look at the history of it, it started way back, with the Romans and, the Greeks. And, even before that, a little bit with the Egyptians. There's some documentation of that. And it's really important because with public speaking, it can build you as a person. And it's also, even in historical times, it was the way that people, spread important messages, whether it had to do with politics or religion, etc. And we've seen public speaking evolve. Before it was mainly, males who were doing it, and then only very recently, women have gotten into the arena of public speaking. And there are some women out there who are responsible for that. And even in terms of communication, the technology of public speaking has evolved. It used to be a person speaking to an audience live, and now, especially with things being virtual, we see things like, the TEDx talks. Public speaking, has taken on sort of a different form. And even though, like, for example, we're speaking today, it's a conversation between us. The intention is, for the public to listen to that. So that takes on a very different experience. So if I can ask you, how did you get into, the art of public speaking?
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's a great question. And I like the background that you've given to public speaking, where it originated from. I mean, previously, when it has to be something official between a speaker and an audience, but after the World War II, it transformed to be something that's conversational. And my understanding of that gave me the ease to get into public speaking. At first, I thought public speaking had to be you standing in front of a huge crowd of people and speaking to them. And that one comes with some kind of fear and something that puts you or sets you back. But when you understand public speaking as something that is conversational, not a presentation or a performance, it becomes very easier. And I've been to interviews in the past and I could not express myself. And for that reason, I lost jobs. There's been times where I had to sell to an audience for a commission, to clients for a commission, but I couldn't sell because I could not communicate the value of the product to the client, and made me lose a lot of opportunities in life. And so when I understood public speaking as a conversation between someone and the other person or a crowd based on a message that you're passionate about from your heart, whether it's about your mess being turned into a message, I thought that, yeah, it's a good thing to get into. And so I joined Toastmasters International and then Speaker Slam, organization that have helped me build my public speaking skills. So I got into public speaking because I felt at a point in my life I was losing too many opportunities, and so I needed to develop myself. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And I like that you said that because it's important for people to know, public speaking in a professional manner is, speaking to an audience about a certain subject, and there's a motivation, behind that. You want to get a certain point across, whether it's a professional point or a passionate point. But people in their day-to-day lives, use sort of like the facilities of public speaking, like you were saying, in a job interview, or maybe if you're giving one of your children a lecture about something that they've done, or if you want to convince someone to do something, those also use elements of public speaking, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, that's really important. So when you started doing this, how did you get into it? Did you read books, or did you sort of find mentors, or people who are considered good public speakers? Did you learn techniques? If you can talk a bit about that.
Yes, before getting to public speaking, I used to listen to inspirational messages like TD Jakes, like other preachers. In Ghana, Mensa Otabo, Istuda Naba. And I felt that what the world needs actually is this kind of inspiration, because sometimes in your down moment, nothing really helps you get up, but that kind of inspiration, that's what can get you up. And so I decided that at a point I was going to hone my communication skills. And so I started reading online, but that was not enough. And I saw someone that I looked up to, Nancy Nyanko. She was a Toastmaster. She was posting some of the things on Facebook. And so when I saw it, I contacted her as to what, because I saw a great transformation in her life. She was a junior way back in school, but I saw the things that she was doing as top and something way mature than she herself. And so I approached her, and then she introduced me to Toastmasters Ghana. And when I joined, I realized, wow, this is where I needed to be, because by going through the projects in Toastmasters, I learned how to introduce myself, how to present a research, how to brand yourself, how to even do a podcast, get a website, be on social media, how to give a keynote address. And it's really been a great transformation in my life just by joining Toastmasters. So the eagerness was there. I kept searching for the best way to develop myself, and then I found Toastmasters. But I realized Toastmasters is a bit broad, and so because my focus I wanted to be into inspirational speaking, even after joining Toastmasters, I decided to join Speakers because they focus on inspirational speaking, like going through sharing your vulnerability to help somebody through storytelling or any other means. So yeah, it's been a journey. First getting online, joining Toastmasters, and now Speakers.
Oh, that's great. So it sounds like what Toastmasters, and Toastmasters is an organization that's very popular around the world. Everyone knows that if you're looking to get into public speaking, it's a great group to join. There's other groups like Rostrum and etc. But it sounds like at the base level, Toastmasters is really building up your inside confidence, right?
Yeah, very, very true. One thing that puts us off when you're speaking to an audience is the likelihood that you make a mistake, somebody will mock at you, or somebody will criticize you. But what Toastmasters does is it gives you that positive learning environment. And so it helps you to appreciate feedback. And so every speech that you give, you have somebody timing you. Every speech that you give, you have somebody telling you what you did well, what you could have done better. Every speech that you give, you have somebody telling you that this is the grammatical errors that you made, somebody telling you that these are the grammatical good grammar that you used. And so you always want to give a speech and then get feedback. And that helps you master that confidence to speak, because you are aware that even if I make a mistake and I'm corrected, it's for my own good. It's to help me develop as a public speaker. So Toastmasters has been a great platform. And after you've gone through a whole pathways, you realize that you've been transformed from somebody who was not so good in public speaking to someone who is really, really good and then confident at speaking.
I like that you mentioned that, because a lot of people, when they start out with this, I myself have seen that, they're very intimidated, they're very shy, quiet, they're on the introverted side. But then when they go through this program, like you're saying, there's that transformation that happens. They come out with this sort of confidence, this positivity, because Toastmasters really is breaking down public speaking to both the science and the art. It's got a curriculum, it's got structure. There is a force program there with intention. And, by going through these motions, you're developing and you're growing, you're building up by passing these different levels. And with the feedback, that's important, because anytime you get any feedback, you know how to alter things that you need to be doing to get onto the right path.
Very true.
So when you first joined Toastmasters, how does it work? Is there sort of like, if you can give us some inside sort of experience on, the starting points of Toastmasters?
Okay, so when I joined Toastmasters, I found it difficult getting a club because there were lots of clubs in Ghana. But when I finally got a club, because I was so hungry to grow, I got my VP, Vice President Education. He was Toastmaster Evans Edujemfi. He actually showed me how to register and then got me a mentor. And then I started giving my speeches. And the first speech, like any other Toastmaster would give, is the Icebreaker Speech. And that's about introducing myself. And something funny happened when I was going to give my icebreaker. I wanted to give a speech in the certain way, but my mentor showed me that what you're trying to do is more like a lecture. It's not a public speech. If you want to give a public speech, you need these three elements. You need an opening, you need a body, you need a conclusion. Your opening should be something that will catch the audience attention. The body can contain the content of your speech, and your conclusion should have a call to action. So I realized that even though I was supposed to introduce myself, I still have to use these three elements. And these three elements has been with me in any speech that I give, whether it's an introduction, whether it's something that I need to say to persuade somebody, every other thing that I do or speak about, I need these three elements. And I couldn't have done it so well if I didn't have a mentor. So the role of a mentor in me getting on board Toastmasters and developing has been very, very also instrumental in my development.
For sure. And I like that you made that distinction between a lecture and, a public sort of speech, because too often, when we're starting out, we just speak without any thought. But then really, there's the science and art of it. You have to really break it down. You have to, convey your message. There's the, I believe it's called the Laswell communication model. And a lot of people use him and his concept as a basis for, speaking. And I think there's 5 steps there. So he talks about, who's giving the speech, what are they talking about, what channel, the speech is being transmitted through, what is the effect of the speech, and then who the audience is. And I would actually add a 6th element, which is, what is the motivation behind the speech, because that's also, central to your intention of, passing on the message.
Exactly.
So, and, that's just, some points to think about when you're speaking. Then you can also sort of get into the nitty gritty, which is, the voice. Your voice is the actual instrument, of speaking, and words are basically conveying or transmuting the energy that you're trying to pass on. So, you can do voice lessons with a voice coach. They can teach you about the key of your voice, the breathing, the phrasing, the sentences that you use. Because, a lot of people might not know this, but if you listen to good public speakers, and we're talking anywhere from, say Martin Luther King to Jim Rohn, motivational speaker. These are people who've not only practiced, their content, and they're masters of their content, but they're also masters of delivery, because, they have to practice that speaking aspect. And some of them, I've seen them in 2-3 different settings. It's the same thing that they deliver, right? It's the same content, the same speech, the same props they have, and they do it. The timing is the same, because they've realized that it's really the science. And when you convey something to someone, it can't sort of always be improvised. There has to be some sort of structure to it.
Yeah, sure. And talking about voice and words, there's this TED talk that says that the impact that your speech have on your audience or the people that are listening to you is 7% the words that you use, it's 38% your voice, and then 55% the body language. And so in Toastmasters, for instance, you have a whole project that has to do with your voice modulation or variation, a whole project that has to do with your body language. So it shows you your gestures, the facial expression, the eye contact, and even the gestures. It breaks it down to emphatic gestures, prompting gestures, suggestive gestures, and different kinds of gestures that you have to use to carry your message in terms of body language. And your voice, when you're sad, you need to lower your voice. When you're happy, your voice has to be up. So the words is just 7%. And in all this, you need to carry a message. And what Speaker Slam also teaches is is in three forms: your presentation, your universal message, and then your storytelling, because they believe that storytelling is a great vehicle to carry your message, because it's you connecting with others authentically. And so these two institutions has really opened my eyes to public speaking. And I like the fact that you're well vested in public speaking from the things that you share with me. And I'm glad to be on this podcast today.
No, for sure. And even myself, when I started out in life, I don't do professional public speaking, but I've done sort of, in past lives jobs as, a music educator. I've, maybe done emceeing at weddings, things like that. And I've learned myself. I haven't really broken it down to a science, but I have given it some thought. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And like you're saying, if you're an MC at a wedding, your body language is everything. How you hold the mic, how you dress. Because people are, it's a visual concept. This podcasting, in a way, it's a different version of public speaking because, of the technological aspect of it. And there's no body language here because people cannot see us. But, they'll get an idea, of our intention through our voice, the speed at which we speak. Sometimes if I'm excited about something, I'll become a little bit more fast paced. If I'm trying to slow down and think about something, I'll slow down my speaking.
Yeah.
So, all of those facets go into play. And, the voice is so important. Many musicians, vocalists who are famous, I think their voice has everything to do with it. And I don't just mean the intonation hitting the right notes. I mean the actual sound of their voice, the character of their voice. And it's a very subtle thing. Someone like Michael Jackson, you can instantly recognize his voice, right? Someone like, say, a Pavarotti. Again, most opera singers will sound generally the same to people who aren't, listening to opera on a regular level. But those opera aficionados, they'll be able to discern those voices. Someone like Frank Sinatra, you can sort of hear that voice. It's unique. And even in movies, right? Like I happen to think that someone like Jerry Seinfeld, who's a great comedian, and in his successful series Seinfeld, his voice had a lot to do with, his character. If he had sort of like a deeper, richer bass voice, I don't think it would have worked as well with this character, right? So it's all of these elements that go into play.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
So with the Toastmasters, what sort of people do you see there in terms of, their background, where they come from? Is it a mix of everything, or how do you find that?
Yeah, Toastmasters is open to almost everyone. You have doctors, you have professors, you have bankers, you have all kinds of people. And one thing I find at Toastmasters is made up of, is that more like an intellectual community. Everybody is coming there to learn. And nobody is seen to be better than the other. When you go there, you're going there to learn. And so you need to listen to others and also allow yourself to be listening to and get a feedback, implement it, and then develop, because everyone is there to grow. And that's the focus, because whether you have your own business, or you're working for someone, or you're a CEO, or you're an employee of a company, everyone comes there with a focus to develop the public speaking and leadership skills.
And why do you find that leadership and public speaking might go hand in hand? Do you see a correlation there? Or?
Yes, leadership, I mean, before now used to be about position and about, trying to tell somebody to do something. But like John C. Maxwell would say, the highest form of leadership, one of the highest form, is about the impact or the influence that you have on others. And you cannot influence your followers if you're not able to communicate well with them. You need to show them the vision of an organization, and you should be able to communicate that vision to them so that they could buy in. And it takes your influence to get them to follow you. It's not about the fact that you are in a position and so they follow you just like that. It's not because you are doing this and so they should do it. You need to communicate that message to them, and they should be in their hearts that they want to follow you because you have really influenced them and inspired them to do what they are doing. And I think that's when leadership and communication goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Correct. No, I like that you mentioned that, because, you can have all the position titles you want. You can pay people all they want, but like you're saying, if it's not, entrenched in their hearts, that influence should drive that passion that is dormant in people, right?
Very true.
Yeah, I think it was Simon Sinek in one of his, famous videos where he talked about Martin Luther King, and that fact that he mentioned, I have a dream, right? That instilled passion in everyone. He didn't say, I have a job to do, we've got work to do, things like that.
Yeah, dream, vision, yeah. That's what gets people influenced. Yeah.
And I like that you also said that we're seeing, different people at places like Toastmasters, like you're saying, doctors, corporate professionals, individuals from school, maybe, like, across the board. And, I mentioned earlier that, with public speaking, it was very sort of, men dominated. And only recently, in the past few centuries that, women have come to prominence. And this is important for people to know, because at one point, women were, publicly banned from, speaking in places like courtrooms and, public settings. And, because of, women like Frances Wright, Maria Stewart, they've sort of, changed that paradigm, right? Which is important. So not only do we have that equality in the working level, but just, even in something as the basic speaking level, just for you to be out there and to get your message out. And that's really important for the evolution of public speaking.
Public speaking, yeah.
So what are you working on now? You've got comfortable with Toastmasters. You've done some public speaking. What is on your plate currently for your practicing?
Okay, so like I said, Toastmasters is more universal. I mean, as a public speaker, but I realized that my focus ought to be inspirational speaking. There's a difference between motivational speaking and inspirational speaking. If you will allow me to explain, motivational speaking has to do with you telling somebody to do this, do that. But inspirational speaking has to do with, I have been through this mess. This is the lessons I picked in it, and it made me a better person. And so you can also be a better person if you do what I did. So you will inspire people with the stories, vulnerabilities, your failures, and it gets people to connect with you because they feel they are listening to a human being and not somebody who is superhuman. And so I want to focus on inspirational speaking. And I found an organization in Canada, Speakerslam, and their focus is in inspirational speaking. And so I have joined them. I joined them not long ago, and that's where I met Parker, and it's been great. I'm learning a lot, something way different from what I learned at Toastmasters, and it's helping me appreciate inspirational speaking even the more. And the kind of projects over there is also something that is challenging, and by the time you're done, you see that you're supposed to be transformed. You need to do a speech, share it on social media, get feedback, and report on that feedback. You need to do a whole lot of. You need to write articles. You need to write blogs. You need to do podcasts. You need to write testimonials about people, just so that you could get certification: silver level, bronze level, gold level, platinum level. Level, I'll say Speakerslam.
Oh, sorry, that last part cut off with the connection. If you can just repeat that. After the bronze level?
So bronze level, there's also the gold level and then the platinum level of certification as an inspirational speaker. Yes, and Toastmasters has helped me as a public speaker in general. But when it comes to inspirational speaking, I would say Speakerslam is a go-to institution.
Got it. Okay. And just, you had mentioned Mr. Parker before, and Parker is Martin Parker, who is one of our previous guests on this episode, who's also involved with the Speaker Slam series. When you're doing inspirational speaking, how necessary is it that you have to have experiences in your life to convey? Or, is that as important, as not having any, and you could still sort of do it?
But one interesting thing about our life is everyone goes through some kind of challenge, some kind of mess. And I mean, as humans, but one thing we don't do is trying to sit down to actually find out which story or which aspect of my life can I share to carry this particular message. If you share an experience of another person, you're not able to connect with your audience better, because if you're only telling us a story about someone, compared to a personal level. This is me, this is you. I'm telling you, this is what I've been through, and this is how I came out. It's more authentic, building connections that way, personal stories. And you can talk about any other story, you carry your message perfectly, but because of the authenticity and that kind of connection that you want to build with the audience, it's always important that you search deep within you to get that kind of story that resonates with you or is about you to share with your audience.
No, that's very true. And, I sort of liken that to if you're listening to an audiobook of, someone's biography or, just someone's book. It's, a third party reader rather than the author themselves, reading the book, because you can actually hear it in the person's voice. You can hear the experience, from the energy, all the trials and tribulations they've gone through, all the happy moments. When you listen to Tony Robbins' voice, he's got that in him. When you listen to David Goggins, in his voice, he's got that passion, that comes from all that experience that they've had. When you've got a third-party reader, it's like you're saying they're reading about someone else. It's very sort of monotone and flatline. The emotion just cannot connect, right, in the same way.
Yeah, and to add to that, when you are delivering a speech, there's a tell them and then a show them. So you need to be able to transport your audience from where they are to where you were when the thing happened. And that takes showing them. So you introduce dialogue. So if you had a conversation with somebody in your story, you need to actually show your audience what actually happened, how you cried and all that. So, when you're speaking a third person, you tell them. But when you are speaking in that personal level, you show them. And so that's that kind of distinction that makes us connect better with our audience through personal stories.
Got it. And this is great because for regular people who don't want to get involved in public speaking, but they do want to communicate their intention, be it to their children who've done something wrong and they have to correct it, or maybe to a friend or family member who's going through a rough patch or a rut, and they have good intentions and they want to help them out. But most often, the normal way it comes out is through the lecture format, which you're saying. But if they can sort of do it in this inspirational way, the message will be received completely different, right? So is there some tips you might be able to offer if someone wants to, correct something wrong their child has done, or if they want to speak to a friend or family member, just to get the message across without the other person being defensive?
All right. I use my father as an example. Growing up, he has been my inspirational speaker. He would always tell you that I lost my parents at a very tender age, but look at me, by dint of discipline and hard work, I am who I am today. And anytime you're going through hardship and you remember what he said, you are motivated, you are inspired to move on in life. He tell you that, at a point, I got sick and I couldn't walk by. I had to be carried into the car, drive to the office, carried out of the car into my office, work, come back, and I had to still get going. And so anytime I feel like I'm so exhausted, I cannot go to work, I remember my father. And then, so when your child, I think that the best form is to share with your children or somebody that's done something wrong, your kind of experiences, okay, and let them know that when you did this is the result. Maybe you were a drunkard, or you did something that was really wrong, and this was a consequence that you faced. And the passion with which you tell your child would make the child know that this is the truth. I need not go into that direction. There was one instance where I was driving on the street, on a high street, and my bonnet just hit my windscreen, and I couldn't see anywhere. I was lost. I thought I was going to die. But I remembered an experience that my father shared. And so I looked out of the window and I was able to see ahead. That is how he did it. And so when he shared with me at that point where I was having the accident, it was his inspiration that saved me. And so he never thought that by sharing me one day would help me this way. And so that's one thing that I believe every parent should show our children. Show them your mess and let it be a message to them, because one day you never know what was going to change their life, from maybe a bad behavior, or from save them from an accident, or encourage them to move on or go to work, So I think that for personal stories and sharing your vulnerability with your kids is something that we cannot take away from our children.
Got it. And at that point, you're basically conveying the emotion primarily and not the content.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been great, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and, sharing your passion. And hopefully after people listening to this episode will get inspired, through you, and just sort of, take it into their everyday lives and utilize it with their family and their friends, and even in a professional setting. I mean, you don't have to, stand on a stage and speak to a large audience. But I've always said, even if one person's listening and they connect with it and it changes something in their life, that's all the audience you need.
Yeah.
So thanks again, and I wish you well in your endeavors.
Thank you so much, Croydon, for having me. I'm so grateful. I'll keep listening to your podcasts every now and then. I'm so grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.